and welcome to the APLL Pulse podcast, where you can uncover new insights from the logistics and freight forwarding industry through the seasoned experts at APL Logistics, a global supply chain provider. We'll help you keep pace with the current topics impacting businesses and advance your logistics strategy. Welcome. This is April Chapman. I am your host on the APLL Pulse podcast, and I am so excited to introduce Marissa Yu to you today. She is a seasoned logistics leader with over 30 years of experience establishing and managing high-performing teams across Asia. Based in Manila, she has built operations for global organizations including Schenker, DSV, and Maersk before joining APLL. Today, she leads our Global Business Services, which we call GBS, and is overseeing nearly 700 employees across multiple locations. Marissa, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, April, thank you for having me. And you know what? When you say it, 30 years, kind of like, wow, really long, yeah.
Looking at you, I don't have any idea how you could have been in this industry for 30 years, but I'm sure you started so young.
Yep, when I was 5 years old, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's go ahead and get started with the very basics, because I'm sure people are out there wondering, what is this GBS? So what is GBS, and how would you explain the purpose of it to internal or external people who may not interact with it on a day-to-day?
So GBS, as you said, is Global Business Services. It's a centralized global model that delivers support functions efficiently, consistently, and at a scale to support the business. What does that mean for APL Logistics? For us, it means it's a centralized function where we do operational support activities, sales support activities, and finance activities, supporting multiple countries. It could also be corporate offices. And the whole goal is to standardize the process when it hits our centers, look into how we could better do it, deliver efficiency through automation or process optimization. And at the end of the day, also because of scale, be able to also have a cost impact with how we deliver our operations.
So you're really impacting so many areas in the company.
Yeah, I mean, as a business model, you can actually put anything within a GBS. In other setups, there could also be an IT, it could be a support of other HR, could also be HR support services. So it could really be anything that can be centralized. My personal point of view, anything you can do behind a laptop or computer where you don't have to be physically in there can potentially be centralized.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that makes sense why you've been leading these GBSs for years. So we're happy to have your expertise here. So let's talk about, I know after having conversations with you, that leadership is one of your big focuses, that you really love to develop leaders. So you lead close to 700 people here across multiple countries and cultures. So how do you approach leading an organization of that size?
Yeah, not easy. A lot of trust, constant communication, but also partnered with leaders who really take accountability to heart. Because you have larger groups, different locations, which means a lot of the things you won't really have a direct control of. So, the way to effectively manage it is to make sure that there's, that the communication is always open. You're always at the same page in terms of what you want to do and how, we're doing things. And then I think I talk about trust because these leaders, at least the people that work with me directly, also have huge teams as next levels.
Right. But to keep developing them. And how do you create an environment where people feel safe giving you feedback? I mean, your teams are spread in. They're Manila, Chongqing, Chennai, right? So many different cultures. How do you create this safe place for people to provide feedback and, based on, their culture, their hierarchical expectations, things like that?
So I mentioned about the communication. That's very important. The transparency also. I think what I see in our centers, they also need to have that confidence in their leaders. To my leaders understand my situation. It's not easy working with operations. Or my leaders also, we call it, are they in touch on the ground? Are they present? And I think that's very important because they need to have their finger on the pulse. At the end of the day, also that we're able to listen to them. We have things to deliver. We have commitments to all our stakeholders that we work with. But at the same time, that has to be balanced with, do I understand what's also going on the ground? So I think when you create that kind of a relationship, that kind of a culture where you welcome feedback and you welcome ideas, then it creates that trust in them to make them comfortable. But you mentioned about cultural differences. So that's actually also a challenge because where we operate, it's, there's still some cultural differences where maybe even if you try to create such an environment, not everybody takes advantage of it or sees it because culturally they're probably more used to more hierarchical environments, and that's something you want to break down through just consistently being present and constantly reminding them that, hey, this is how we want to do it. So it's really the culture that you build within the centers to make sure that, okay, we just keep on trying to make sure that, we get this drawn out from people.
Right, right. Yeah, making an effort to listen, right? Okay, I have another question. So, how do you build community within your teams?
So in GBS, you said 700 people, right? And our age group is really young. I think in some centers, average of below 30, 27, 28. And that's a different, where I'm compared to my generation, that's a different approach. So for us, it's really to cater to this young group. You have to build in a bit more engagement and fun. Let's say in Manila, we have a lot of these events. We celebrate huge Halloween events and year-end parties. And it's not like, hey, you just go trick or treat. Employees dress up their stations, they play the part. It has to be experiential for people who's going around the office. We've had a few visitors who, participated in it. Our year-end party is huge because all our different teams also compete, and this is not about the prize; it's about the pride. So of winning. So then they go all out, live singing, dancing, choreograph, and this is all leaders around. That's the sense of belongingness that we try to build within the centers. Also in our other, in Chennai and in Chongqing, they would have similar year-end activities. They would also have different engagement parts, like it could be, they share cooking activities and a hiking part. So it would depend on, what this, more liked by the people in our, where our centers are located. But yeah, we try to make sure that we have those engagement activities because at the end of the day, we know work, is what we need to do, but we also need to find that balance within our teams.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things I love most about our company is, that we are very engaging. We like to do engagement activities and let people get involved to know each other, not just at work, but just on an individual, personal level and have fun and compete and things like that. So that's exciting to hear you guys are doing that out there. And I think that you have one of the programs across the company that I have from day one. When I heard about this, I was very much interested and engaged in it. You had something called Sparks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it first ran across my desk, I was like, "Ooh, this is something I get behind because I am an idea person." So, why don't you tell people what that program is and how you started it?
First, thank you for recognizing it. I'm happy that you like the program. So when GBS started within APLL, when we did the structure 3 years ago, we were thinking, your leadership team cannot have everything, right? You cannot have all the ideas and all these. And the best ideas actually come from the people who are closer to the activities, who are actually doing it. And how do we capture it? And so people will always have ideas. You speak to anybody out there, will always have an idea. But how do we capture it and how do we take it to action? If it's really good idea, how do we take it to action? So we came up with the Sparks program together with this one. I will not take full credit to it. It's actually together with our GBS head of, process improvement and SQ. Together we, thought of, okay, how can we put it in a platform and how do we promote it across? So it could be any idea, big or small, could be what you would call a Kaizen, anything you can implement quickly on the ground that would benefit you. It could be bigger, like a process improvement that requires a bit more coordination because what we do today, we could actually do better if we actually work with different parties. It can also be bigger ones that require some automation. So yeah, we try to capture that, and we've institutionalizing it. So, we put it as part of our rewards and recognition, just to make sure that we recognize those ideas and we motivate people to keep them coming. So big or small, we create a bank of ideas.
I love that. I love that. So, can you give, I know you just said some are smaller ones and some are bigger ones. Can you share any examples? Can you share like a specific example of maybe a spark or an idea that you guys were able to carry all the way through to completion and it's made a pretty big impact here? Or just an impact that was super helpful?
Well, small ones are too many to mention because that's like your everyday macros and all these things that, where we work, there's a lot of manual things, right? The big one, actually, this one I give credit to the team in Manila, which actually we've now implemented across the 3 centers. So when we were starting, there were a lot of pain points, which is the manual work of, part of our work is documentation, where we have to verify bills of lading. And we do that through what we call eyeball check. And then the other one is we do also a lot of manual work in what we would call a report from a system. We pull what we call end of day admin, where we look at the things that we need to do for the day. And that entails a lot of working of the data. And what we did, the team thought of, can we not automate this? So together with the RPA team, we worked on creating an OCR where we could get this bills of lading that could already compare it for us, and then we could just literally check, just tick it off if it's correct or right. So we've rolled it off with one carrier. We're working on the rest. And the other one is for the manual work that we did, we created a dashboard, draws data directly from the system. So it's easier for people to actually see what's due for the day, and also allows visibility for our leaders in different levels to actually also have that view, which was not possible with just in Excel. So it's huge. It entailed a long, time working, collaborating with our RPA team, but today it's been very useful for us.
Hey, you know what? Anything worth doing, well, can pay off. You invest the time and the effort and you see the payoff. So that's awesome. Well, I love that started as a spark, just a spark of an idea. And then you guys brought it all the way to fruition. So congratulations. Congratulations. Okay, so I love that Sparks inspires people to share their ideas, but I'm interested in you right now. So what kinds of people or behaviors inspire you most?
In Filipino, if I could say a Filipino word, you would call it puso. Puso for us, that means heart. So that's actually quite important for me. It's inspired because, heart means a lot of things. Puso first means a lot of things. You could be hardworking, but you could also have a lot of grit. You're driven, but you're also working with a lot of integrity. And then at the same time, you're also humble enough to be able to say, hey, I'm continuously learning. And I think, and a touch of that of kindness too, when you deal with people. That's a lot, and say, yeah, everybody has it, but not everybody has everything rolled into one. And when I meet those people, you could meet really smart people and have a little bit of, some of these things, right? But when you meet somebody who always has it, for me, they're wow, they just impress me. Because how do you do it? That, I think, that maturity, that empathy, and that care to others, how do you balance that? I think is not an easy task. It's always something that, at least for me, you want to aim for.
Right, right. Wisdom, having wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that answer. See, I love throwing these kind of questions where I get to know you better and the whole audience gets to. It's awesome. Thank you, Marissa. All right. If you could invite the rest of the company to better understand or appreciate one thing about GBS, what would it be?
I'll be honest, if I can invite everybody to visit GBS, I'd actually do that. No, no, seriously, because I think, when people work with GBS, they have an idea, but it's based on the interface that they have. But I think when people come to GBS, they realize there's so much going on. The activities under GBS, that's a lot. It's not just documentation, not just this. So the scope that what we actually cover and what we try to do when we try to move it within GPS, I think, is sometimes also an eye-opener for some people who have not worked with GPSs before. The other one is I'd like them to meet our people, because I know all over, especially in our organization, a lot of hardworking people. But also here, I think the amount of knowledge that we try to build, one person to understand multiple accounts, multiple countries, trying to embed that's not easy. And to do that in certain span of time, but at the same time having to deliver all your KPIs, it requires a lot of skill. And our leaders also, hands down, you manage, apart from being your process experts, in what they do, they manage teams, 15, 20. If you're a manager, 50, 70, just being present, but at the same time, operationally delivering. I think people would have a better appreciation of what's going on under GBS if you really, get to meet the people and see it for themselves. And I'll be honest with you, that's actually the feedback I also get when we get visitors here. They're pleasantly surprised what's going on. And I think that's a good testament of, what we've actually been trying to work on the past years.
I love that too. Yeah, I there's always such a benefit when we can be in each other's spaces, right? Where we can see where we work, what we do, the scope of it. That's a fair point, and I think that that's wonderful. And I wish we could just invite everybody. Field trips down there, right?
Yeah. But I know they can't. But if they,
if possible. I don't know. You started me having a couple ideas we'll have to talk about later. See? They're sparking. They are sparking right now. We're going to have another discussion even after this podcast about it. Okay. So in closing today, though, is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't cover but feels important to your story?
Well, in everyone's journey, there's always things to learn, all that. And really, it's a continuous process. You never stop learning. And you just really have to be very, very open. And along the way, I always say, be yourself. Never, your uniqueness is actually your strength when you journey as a leader, right? So never lose that. You will always pick up things. There will always be good people to emulate. But who you are and your uniqueness, I think that's what you actually bring into the table, and that has led you. Then at the end of the day, for me, our goal as leaders is to really see the people we work with, we mentor, succeed. Not just within our current relationship, but beyond, right? And I think that authenticity about really caring for them is actually where we come in, or we find our value as leaders. So that's basically my guiding principle as a leader.
Well, we are blessed to have you as one of our leaders, Marissa. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for the listeners. We'll see you next time on the APLL Pulse podcast. Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you heard, or if you have any questions about today's episode, reach out to us at global_marketing@APLLogistics.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast apps. You will also find us on LinkedIn or visit us at APLLogistics.com. We'll see you next time on the APLL Pulse podcast.